Former diplomat Neelam Dev is joining us, co-founder of Gateway House, joins us from Mumbai. Ms. Dev, how do you view the results currently? There seem to be, of course, most of the red states have been counted, very few blue states from the blue wall. But so far, the Republicans have a very clear advantage and they're also leading in terms of the popular vote.
That's right. But I think it's clear that most of the states, which is sort of in the heartland of the United States, these are more rural than the urban states, urbanized states, which favor Democrats. It's easier for these heartland states to declare their results faster, slightly smaller populations in most of them, and so the count goes more easily. I think there's no question that if, for instance, along with Florida and Texas, the result in California and New York was also added in, the two candidates would be more neck and neck.
Yes.
So I think we really have to just wait for results in what are blue states to come in. And of course, most importantly, if any of the battleground states are flipped by the Republicans, then that will give us some important indications and will give the Democrats more to worry about than Republicans.
Right, indeed. And of course, the voting has taken place from East Coast to West Coast, and the counting is also taking place that way. So California will be towards the end when we'll get the results from the entire blue wall. But if we look at this election otherwise, how would you see that, the manner in which the Americans have come out to vote? They've come out in large numbers, and the issues have been the economy, abortion, democracy was one of the issues, immigration is another issue. How would you view, they had some polls earlier about the types of issues, and people had said that the issue of the economy was top on their mind. The issue of democracy was also top on their mind. Then the issue of abortion was also there. The question is, when you have all these issues, one is not sure what issue is being voted upon. So how would you gauge who's voting on what? That's my question.
So I think, there have been hundreds of polls and with slightly different outcomes here and there. As far as I'm concerned, a few big takeaways. One is that the deep divisions in American society are reflected in the way what are traditional red states, how they have voted, and how the blue states are expected to have voted. We will see whether that applies to many of the traditional blue states and what happens in the swing states. But there's no question that American society is deeply divided and is not at all open to exchanges of opinions, views, information with the other side, partly because of the way social media enables citizens to live within the media bubbles from where they pick up their information. That's one very important aspect.
Right.
The other is, of course, that for everybody, red, blue, whoever, day-to-day issues are top of the table. You have to be concerned with cost of living, even though unemployment has gone down to just 4%, which is itself an achievement in the United States. And inflation has been arrested. But arrested doesn't mean that the earlier price rise has been pulled back. So there's no question that food, for example, or cars or mortgages cost more than they cost 3-4 years ago, pre-pandemic, shall we say. So it is inevitable that the government in power will be blamed for the fact that prices have increased, even though they have stopped increasing now. And in a couple of cases, like fuel, like gas, as the Americans say, has actually been going down. Now, many of these issues are, of course, out of the hands of the government or the president. The war in the Middle East, that sort of issue almost I mean, it is expected that the American government would have exerted itself more to deal with the trauma that the Middle East war has been causing, but it's not entirely in their hands. On the
Sure.
other hand, some issues which are exceedingly important to different age groups, environmental issues for the young, the abortion and Supreme Court composition related issues for women, these will also be reflected in how the voting goes in other states as the results come in, and particularly in the swing states. The fact that more older women are expected to go out and vote for Kamala Harris, the fact that younger men below 40, including many from the African American community, the Hispanic community, even the Indo American community, are leaning towards the Republicans. A lot
Right.
of these differences of opinion will actually get reflected in the swing states and could determine the outcome of the election.
What weightage would you give to the personality cult surrounding Donald Trump? I mean, after all, he is a divisive figure. There are either people who love him or hate him. And, in his first term, he had clearly marked out the media as the opposition party, and he had created the concept of, I mean, he started talking about the concept of fake news and created a narrative which also helped the growth of social media. And we can see that social media has played a very significant role in this election. And you did talk about, each within their own sort of echo chambers. To what extent do you think, the personality of Trump has affected this election?
I think there is a view that he has a high ceiling of support. 45% of Americans support Donald Trump no matter what. They supported him for the 2016 election, they supported him in the 2020 election, and it looks like most of them have supported him in this election. The question really is whether he has been able to increase the number of his supporters, and whether undecided voters, which is maybe 1% of the electorate, will swing this way or that way. That he is a divisive figure is also the way the media characterizes him, because you could equally take the position that Kamala Harris, a woman of color, of half Indian origin and half African American or Jamaican origin, all these, misogyny, the gender issues, these are also divisive factors in the United States. So I think it's not appropriate to try and understand the divisions in society by attributing them all to Donald Trump,
Right.
who
Sure.
has a strong base of support. But what will determine the outcome of this election is whether he can increase his support among the men who anyway support him, and whether undecided voters choose to come out and vote at all, and if they do come out, whether they lean Republican or Democrat.
Right. We're also joined by our correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh, who's standing outside, who's in Washington, D.C. And the District of Columbia has already been declared for the Democrats, for Kamala Harris. Shubhendu, we are seeing that, at least the blue states seem to be slower in counting than the red, because after all, the blue wall is on the West Coast. Even though there is some euphoria about, the Republicans already crossing 207 and Kamala Harris only at 91, it's not yet a done race, isn't it?
Absolutely, Mark. We have to look at the projections for what they are, projections, and we have to see the states and the regions where Donald Trump is getting those electoral votes. They're mostly red states. So red continues to be red, and blue is yet to become blue. It's somewhat of a pattern like that. And swing states still continue to be at the heart of what might decide the outcome of this presidential elections. I also want to tell you at the location where I am, I'm right outside Harvard University. This is the alma mater of Vice President Kamala Harris. This is where she's going to be tonight to see the manner in which the counting's progress. There are hundreds of her supporters, students, alumni of the university who've been pouring in. They've all sort of gone inside. They've all settled down. Vice President would be joining them, and together, what is a tradition of an election night of watching the results unfold together with your supporters is something that's going to happen at this a place which is very, very memorable and close to Vice President Kamala Harris. And here the institution also is looking forward to finding out if the already very illustrious alumni, the Vice President, could in fact become the first woman President of United States of America.
Right, we can see there are quite a few TV crews behind you, Shubhendu, but you know, you've had a long day, so put it into context for us. An election day in the United States, what's it like? I mean, after all, there was a huge campaign, there was a lot of early voting, and then there are people, I suppose, who wait for the election day traditionally. In fact, Donald Trump is calling only for the election day to be the day on which people should vote. He says that's the fair process. So, I mean, what's your assessment about how the Americans have handled the election day?
That's a very interesting question, Mark, and I would say there's almost a mix of feelings that I've experienced through the early voting to the election day. And to this time here, it's a festive sort of a climate. There's a lot of music playing. There are a lot of food courts. Youngsters have come all dressed up as if for a weekend party. They're going to be here with their very illustrious alumni, Kamala Harris, for the counting day. We saw in the early voting there was a degree of urgency in the voters to be done with their duty and look forward to the election day. On the election day, we saw in the run-up to it anxiety, tension, how will it pan out, so much focus on security arrangement that was quite unprecedented. The elections, at least in Washington, D.C., the polling booths that we were covering, we saw that it went quite smoothly. There was police sirens honking in the background to keep a check on any untoward incident. But by and large, the elections went smoothly. And now it just seems that everyone wants to have their hair down, hang their boots, and have a good time, really sit back and enjoy the counting. We yet to, the apprehensions that were there earlier, mostly related to what if Donald Trump lags behind in the early counting, what kind of reactions might come in from his supporters. Those concerns for now are put to rest. So it seems like the whole election mood has come full circle, from urgency to anxiety to tension to getting be done with it. And now more relaxed atmosphere prevails here. Mark?
Right. And when can we expect Kamala Harris to come to Harvard University? And because after all, you know, the blue states have not really started counting, would she be waiting for that entire process to end before she comes?
That, as you mentioned, the West Coast is...
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. You, for a brief while we couldn't hear
Yes,
you,
Mark.
but now we can. Go ahead.
All right. So yes, we're also on standby to find that out. Hundreds of our supporters are all inside. Yes, West Coast voting has to conclude, and from there an update has to come. The initial trends have to come. But she would be here. This is the place where all the arrangements have been made. Very first time an election night is going to be celebrated in a manner at her alma mater, Harvard University here in Washington, D.C.
Right. Stay with us, Shubhendu. We also have senior diplomat Neelam Dev with us. Ma'am, so when we look at, you know, the outcomes of this election as they seem to be moving in a particular direction, let's just presume that it's a victory for Donald Trump. In what way should India be looking at, you know, this new government?
I think the Indian position has been enunciated by the External Affairs Minister more than once, and in fact will be the position of most governments except the Europeans, the NATO members. We work with whoever is elected And in India particularly, since we we value our own democratic situation, we will go with the outcome of democracy, democratic voting in the United States. But obviously for the Europeans, with their how deeply they are invested in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, it is really, they are treating it almost as a life and death issue. They are very concerned that if President Trump comes in, will there be a change in the American position on NATO, on its support to Ukraine? So I think for some countries, it matters greatly who is elected. But for most of the world, and certainly for India, we are ready to work with whoever the democratic process yields in the United States. And also because it has been our experience in the past that the relationship, the Indo-US relationship, has deepened, it has intensified under both Democratic and Republican administrations.
A final word from you, Shubhendu. Now that things seem to be clear to some extent, you had already reported earlier that, there was a lot of security being put up just in case a January 6th like incident took place again. Has any of that security been of any use today?
Well, it has induced a degree of confidence in the election machinery, in the poll officers who've been working so hard all day, for many days, in fact, to make sure that election day goes well. There was considerable security threats against polling booths, polling officers. In that sense, putting all those bulletproof glasses, drone surveillance had made sure that the very crucial day has passed off without any untoward incidents. And again, it's too early to call. We yet to get the final numbers, and we'll have to see the kind of reactions that come in from the supporters of the two sides. For now, Donald Trump seems to be getting all the numbers on his side, but these are again the red states from where he's scooping all the electoral college votes. So it just may be a little too early to also say that the election results are over and the tension one can put to rest, because but the numbers come in, it's the swing states where the main battleground of this election is. Those are also too early to call. So that's the concern, Mark. It'll be possible to answer that question once we have more trends coming in from the swing states, the blue states. So we see the entire picture, and so do the supporters, and we'll have to see how they react to it.
Right. Thanks very much, Shubhendu. You've had a long day. Thanks for being with us, and we'll come back to you when you do have more information for us. Thanks for being with us for the moment. Well, the Democrat Sarah McBride has become the first openly transgender person elected in the United States' House of Representatives, as per the Edison research, which projected on Tuesday, winning the election to Delaware's at-large seat. McBride, who is a 34-year-old state senator, won the competitive primary for Delaware's at-large congressional district, considered a safely Democratic seat, in September. And she became the first openly transgender person to serve as a state senator when she was elected in 2020, first to speak at a U.S. National Political Party convention in 2016, and the first to intern at the White House in 2012 under the Democratic former President Barack Obama. Right. Let's turn once again to Ambassador Dev. Ma'am, when we look at, the other issues that seem to be in the U.S. society, there is the issue, of course, of abortion, but then there is the other issue of gender. And of course, there is the progressive stand that a lot of these things are the, par for the course. Things are changing in society. And while the conservatives want to hold back on a lot of things because youngsters may be misinformed, especially about the transgender issues, they don't want to encourage these things. How would you view, American society I mean, the blue states are moving in a particular direction, the red states are moving in a particular direction on this matter.
So I would say to you that American society might be more advanced on these issues than American politicians, especially Republican politicians. You know, if you look back a few decades, American women got the vote, really late in the last century. The American society was, at least politicians were viscerally against gay Americans. Gays in the army was a big issue for a while. All these are now settled issues. Even Republicans and Republican politicians support the rights of American gays. You have seen the immense advances that women have made in American society, in education, and that they are making even now in the corporate American society, where more and more women are becoming CEOs. There are sectors like, the IT sector, which are real bro sectors, as they call them, where not enough women have been able to move up. But I think society is advancing. You might recall that when President Obama was elected or was campaigning, it was felt that America may not be ready for a black man. But in fact, America not only elected Barack Obama twice to be president, but it has continued to embrace his legacy. So is it an issue in America that to have a woman president? I think there will be some people in the American society who will be reticent on that. But I think broadly American society is more liberal than perhaps American politicians are, who try to look for and make issues out of change that is happening in the country, in the society.
Very much, former diplomat Neelam Dev. Thank you, madam, for being with us and enlightening us on, the election results in the United States, the presidential election as we receive them. Thank you for putting them into context for us.